few of these in Singapore. I don't know if we have any overlap between the crowd. So what we're doing is DeFi eating CeFi? Are they symbiotic? Do they kill each other? Who kills each other first? Things like that. Show of hands. Who has done anything on DeFi or on chain in the last week? Not as many hands. Yeah. In the last week, okay, decent amount. So we have a ways to go, clearly. So my name is Alex Pack. We'll do intros first. I run a crypto venture fund. I've been a crypto VC for 11 years and done a lot of the early DeFi deals in the space. Do you guys want to do quick intros about your project? And then what is the DeFi product that you guys use the most, obviously excluding your own protocols?
So Kane, founder of Infinex, our stated goal is to transition out of centralized exchanges into on-chain platforms. So that's what we're working on, is trying to end the centralized exchange here.
I'm Antonio, the founder.
Product that you use the most.
Product that I use the most.
Other
than my own. I've been playing around with noise on maybe testnet for the last few weeks, which has been pretty fun. Trading on attention, basically.
Antonio, the founder of DYDX. We have been around in DeFi for about 8 years at this point, and we're focused on DeFi derivatives. I'd say the DeFi product outside of DYDX that I use the most, it's got to be Uniswap. I think they're pretty big innovators, and I feel like it's hard to use DeFi without using some kind of spot exchange like that.
Hey everyone, my name is Cindy. I'm the co-founder of Drift. We are the largest derivatives exchange on Solana, and we are also an all-in-one DeFi protocol. We have borrow, lend, spot trading, margin trading, as well as derivatives all in one. And as for DeFi app, to be completely honest, I mainly use Drift. We have everything all in one, so that's one of our biggest pitches. Otherwise, I also really like all the other apps represented here.
I just realized it's 3 Perps founders on stage. Is that intentional, or I don't know?
It's going to be a very perp-heavy discussion. Yeah. Well, let's actually start somewhere else. So I want to give the high-level stats just to paint the picture. So basically, there's 3 areas, I think, so far where DeFi has made any penetration to sort of get significant penetration versus centralized. Lending, and then trading. And within trading, we got Perps and we have spot. So lending actually did flip CeFi in the last cycle. It was basically both of them, CeFi and DeFi lending, fell quite a bit in 2022. And CeFi lending kind of barely recovered, didn't really recover much at all. The BlockFis and so forth of the world there's sort of never been a new version of that. Actually, with the exception of Tether, maybe, they've taken the most market share. But DeFi lending flipped, and it's actually, exceeded all-time highs. So I think it's like 65% market share. And it grew from like 35% a couple years back last cycle. So that one is the one doing well. The others, not so much. So Spot, I think, has been sort of holding steady the last year or two at around 20-25% market share. And then Perps, where we have a lot of specialty, it's much smaller, but it's probably growing faster. So I think Perps volumes have taken market share from like maybe 8 or 9% to like 15% over versus Binance, at least the big guy, over the last year and a half. So it's growing faster, but still at much smaller levels. I guess, what do you guys make of that? Why do you think lending is first? Is that just like a bearish argument for the space?
I mean, all the competitors blew up, right? So
yeah.
It's not a great representation of CeFi in the lending space. So it was maybe a forfeit on the part of CeFi for that one.
Yeah, best tallest midget, maybe.
Yeah, I think it just has to do with market structure and it's also the sophistication of the product. So on the market structure side, obviously derivatives are the most complex products that one can trade within crypto. And even within crypto, they are the biggest products. And generally, we've seen these products evolve last in CeFi. And I think we're seeing a very similar type of evolution in DeFi, where it starts with spot, starts with lending, and then ultimately moves towards derivatives. As I mentioned, DYDX has been around for a while now, and Alex, as you mentioned, we're just recently starting to see within the past year or two a lot of adoption relative to CeFi, and still fairly small, but it's growing over time.
I'd say the biggest reason that lending has grown so much in DeFi is due to composability and the ability to rehypothecate assets within a DeFi native context. You can see easily within the Solana ecosystem, for instance, assets being used on borrowland on one platform and then being rehypothecated into other DeFi lending platforms. You can see a paper trail of this very easily in a transparent blockchain context in a way that you couldn't with CeFi lending. So DeFi lending has really taken off as a result of the fundamental market structure of blockchains. And I think that's going to extend very quickly as the velocity and the throughput of underlying L1s increase to enable more high frequency transactions to take place. We're going to see the benefits of DeFi take over the rest of the asset supply chain.
Actually, I think the composability thing you bring up is really interesting because I think you guys all probably differ, at least in your architecture. So you guys are built on Solana, composability chain, right? I think Synthetics is more on L2s. You guys have your own chain that you decide on, and then the other big Perp exchange Hype is also on its own chain. Do you guys think it's not quite as important? Isn't that the main difference?
I think for Perps, composability is probably the least useful thing, right? Compared to almost every other primitive. It can be in its own silo. It's why the YDX was able to go to their own chain so quickly without really much of a trade-off. Versus lending, if you're on your own island, it's going to be very, very hard to
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. I'd say we're going after a very different market segment in Perps than most other things in DeFi as well. It's just a very sophisticated customer, and there's trading firms that require a huge amount of throughput. There's very sophisticated individual traders. And I talked about the market structure being one of the main reasons why these more complex products have taken longer to mature within crypto. The other reason is technical. And because these traders demand such high performance, it's interesting because literally just the Perp spec space has really been the thing that's pushing technology forwards, at least from an apps perspective, within the base blockchain technology. So DYDX, we started on Ethereum L1, we built on an Ethereum L2 3 or 4 years ago before it was cool, and now we're built on our own app chain, as you mentioned, Alex. And the reason for this is it's just a huge amount of throughput that's required. Right now, the DYDX chain is doing about 5,000 to 10,000 transactions per second, all with no gas fees. And this is just what you need to cater to this really advanced customer segment. And that's pretty different from, like a Uniswap or a lending protocol or something else that might have different trade-offs.
Our current argument here is that composability actually enables a whole new type of Perps trading, which you can see in cross-margining. So the ability to use different assets as collateral. And this is why we've stuck with Solana and building on an L1 since 2021, because now you can use any asset that's generated on the L1 as collateral. One example is the ability to use things like SOL LSTs that are earning you 5 to 7% in underlying collateral without needing to sell it into USDC. The ability to use native stablecoins across the L1 and benefiting off that composability allows you to have a more rounded trader experience. So I would say yes, the performance of the L1 eventually also catches up. I think Solana is actually at a place where it can scale to allow for such high frequency trades as well. But yeah, across the board, I think those are the trade-offs that we've seen within building on the L1.
Yeah. Is the goal, do you think, for your products to get to parity to the centralized equivalents? Or, more interesting, novel use cases, right? Composability being maybe one of these things, right? That is sort of the DeFi versus CeFi thing they were talking about. So if not that, what, right?
Yeah, I'll take it first. And I would say parity is just the start. right? Like, why would you use DeFi if it's just the same thing as CeFi? Like, I've been sitting up on these stages and like, you'll hear every fucking panelist be like, it's trustless, it's transparent, it's decentralized, use it. And those are true. And those are real reasons that you should use something, but nobody really cares that much about that, honestly. And it's up to us as technologists and builders in this space to infuse the things that people actually want to do, which are novel use cases, with these values that we really care about. And that's the reason why we're building in DeFi. And that's the thing we've become very excited about at DYDX is, hey, how can you trade anything on an exchange? And this is the thing that's really started to build a lot of momentum with spot exchanges. My general thesis on everything that's become popular in crypto so far is we're seeing this trend of an exponentially increasing number of assets year over year. Every single year, there's about 10 times more assets, number of assets that you can trade in crypto. Back in 2020, there were like 1,000 things you could trade on Uniswap. Fast forward to 2022, there were like tens of thousands of things. You get NFTs. Today, there's hundreds of thousands of things that are being launched every day on platforms like Pump Fun. And I think, we'll continue to see that billions of assets someday. And so I really think about DYDX's mission in that as being, hey, how are we the professional trading platform for this broad array of assets that you're just never going to be able to trade on a centralized platform? Like, how could a centralized exchange list 1 billion assets, right? It's impossible. It can't be done. And that's what we're building here. And again, going back to the values piece, I think it's really our job to articulate those values, but not necessarily selling on them. I think it's just our job to infuse those values into the technology with these new things that are what you actually want to do.
Yeah, I mean, users care about features, right? They care about performance. To your point about the people who primarily trade perps, latency is one of the main things, liquidity, getting the best fill. They are unwavering in what they ask you to do. And so, of course, you need to get to feature parity. You need to get to liquidity parity. You need to do all of the things that at least make you competitive with CeFi. But then that's not sufficient, right? No one's going to leave Binance to get the exact same experience. You're going to have to go and do more. There has to be some marginal utility that you offer to the user, which is long-tail assets, portfolio margin, cross-chain portfolio margin. There's a bunch of things that these venues can offer at the point that they hit feature parity to exceed feature parity with a centralized exchange. The challenge, I think, for all of us has been getting to feature parity. To your point, it's taken us maybe longer than we all thought to get there, but I do think that we are close to an inflection point where there'll be many different venues that are decentralized that are competitive with CeFi.
I actually think that we've already hit feature parity on many fronts that are noticeable for an end user. If you trade on a CeFi Perps exchange versus most DeFi Perps exchange, you won't see a noticeable difference at all. In fact, you probably wouldn't even realize that you're using DeFi today. I think the real innovation now is taking what is unique to DeFi and what is a net new use case. And one thing I'm really excited about is the fusion of real-world assets and on-chain native assets, including the ability for real-world companies to launch more tokens on-chain and have access to a fully fledged financial ecosystem that is 100% on-chain from the very start. We're starting to see, the idea of internet capital markets take place in DeFi, where companies are choosing to, instead of, IPOing, going on-chain and doing a smaller scale IPO and going through the entire DeFi ecosystem, on-chain NASDAQ, on-chain borrow lend facilities, and really just becoming a native on-chain company, similar to how many companies were native to the internet in the early 2000s. And those are the really interesting use cases that we're starting to see converge today.
What do you guys think are the biggest blockers? Either in the next few years you're trying to solve, when you talk about the roadmap, or we've all been building in the space for many, many years. So what was something that you thought would come really easily, took 5 years, right? Something like that.
Well, the core technology is really hard. I totally agree with you, Kane. I think we are close to being at parity with centralized exchanges, but probably not entirely there yet in terms of at least the performance for really pro types of products. So that's hard. We've been working on that for a long time. I'll zoom out with my answer to this question, though. I think the biggest thing that we're lacking is that crypto is playing on a world stage. And I feel like we're seeing this at a lot of these conferences are a good reminder of this, but it feels to me like crypto is still something on a global stage that's pretty insular. And I feel like we need to break out of that. Every bull market that we've seen historically has been 10 times bigger or so than the one previously. And that's why we're all excited about crypto. At least that's why I'm excited about it. It's a technology that feels very exponential to me in a lot of ways, and it's very tied to finance. I think the challenge and what we saw with this most recent sort of bull blip or whatever this was is the expectations are so high, right? Like the last actual bull markets, we were seeing crypto play out on the world stage just a little bit, but it was still significant. There was things like FTX, stories that pretty much the entire world was paying attention to, right? And do we have that right now? No, I don't think we do. Is that the end of the world? No. Look how many people there are here right now. But if we want to continue to grow this industry in a really exponential way, and if we want DeFi to actually lead this industry, we're talking about is it 10%? Is it 30%? Yeah, that's not interesting today, but who even cares, right? Even if it's 100% someday, then we've just built the exact same thing as centralized exchanges have already built. That's not that interesting to me, at least. And so I think we want to zoom out. We want to take a longer term approach to this. And we really have to challenge ourselves as Web3 builders to build the next thing that the whole world cares about. And that's really hard, right? And that's going to take a number of more years than I think we've seen play out in previous cycles. And I think that's why the cycle is taking longer. I think that's why we all need to challenge ourselves to zoom out. That's why we need to challenge ourselves to build with longevity. And I feel like our mission at DYDX, and I would guess it's true for a lot of people on the stage, is to just whatever that next thing is going to be in crypto, the thing that a lot of the people in the world care about, we need to make that tradable in a really professional way on places like DYDX and elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, we had a debate, 4 years ago or something like this, where we were talking about some of these trade-offs and decisions that could be made. And I think, history has shown that you were right to a large extent, Antonio, where the key thing is to get adoption. And if you're optimizing for something other than adoption, which I think in the early DeFi days a lot of us were, we were opting for things that were ideologically aligned or some other goal that was orthogonal to just user demand and user adoption. We created an early industry that was built on enthusiasts, built on people that were aligned with the kind of ethos that we had. And then there was a ceiling that we hit and we weren't able to break out of it. And I think that by changing some of the requirements that we've been operating under, and you look at Solana as well, Solana is a good example of that, really not optimizing for maximal decentralization, right? Saying that, we can be on a different, place in the decentralization continuum and it will be helpful. So, with Infinex, that's what we've done. We've kind of started from first principles and said, what would good UX look like and what does it need to, what do you need to build to get there? And so, I think we've seen a lot of founders who have made that pivot away from, maybe decentralization maximalism or censorship resistance and kind of move into how do we get adoption? We need to cross the chasm from early adopters and enthusiasts to the broader market, because at the moment, CeFi is still dominating the vast majority of volume. So most crypto users are still operating in someone's database. We need to break out of that, and that requires getting the feature parity.
Well, what are some examples of that you think to cross the chasm? Right, it's just better onboarding, security. What does it mean when you want to have better user experience? Right.
I think it's everything, right? The first centralized exchanges, Mt. Gox started in 2011, right? Then Coinbase and Kraken and a bunch of centralized exchanges came, and that was the wallet form factor that from that moment almost 15 years ago has dominated all of crypto activity. And the reason why it's dominated is because it's by far the best user experience. Until the point where you lose all your money, it's great. And so you have no gas, no chains, all of the assets. It's very clearly better than what we've been doing in DeFi, because what we do in DeFi requires a level of education. So we need to make it as easy to use in every dimension as CeFi, and then we can start to leverage our superpowers to do better stuff.
So I still like passwords. Yeah, I prefer having a profile. but the wallet is not exactly the same, you know?
I agree with this. Yeah, and I think we, like the builders who have been here for a long time in the space, have spent quite a long time and a lot of effort to even getting to this place where we're pretty close to feature parity with centralized exchanges. I actually think we're hitting an inflection point now where it's more about this new stuff. And even if you look at a lot of things in this mini cycle, if we want to call it that have become popular, like what is it? What were the first time users in crypto using? They were downloading Phantom, not Binance. Right, and that's something that's actually pretty notable. Like that's never happened before, and I think we expect to see things like that, just new entry points into Web3 without even having to go through a centralized exchange, become a lot more popular in the future. And it's again like those new types of use cases.
The main thing that we're missing is really, I would say, more consumer founders building in crypto. You know, the technology is there today. The contracts are open sourced, ready for more people to build front ends on top of. I would say that it takes a new influx of founders who are leveraging the existing DeFi technology. We're not actually pairing as much with the smart contracts, but new front ends that are tied towards things that people want to use. One example is the rise of prediction markets. You would not think that that's DeFi, but fundamentally to me, prediction markets are a DeFi product. They're markets, they're trading, they're using open source smart contracts. And we recently launched prediction markets on top of our existing Perps contracts. And we're seeing an influx of new founders coming in and wanting to take this product from 1 to 10. So my take is that the technology is already there for these consumer apps to exist. We need founders who are focused on the distribution layer, who are focused on the sales layer to really take DeFi to the next level. We're even starting to see, Web 2 giants starting to come in and say, I want to tap into this existing DeFi flow and these existing DeFi smart contracts. Why not use the ones that already exist? I think the missing piece here is the link between consumer and the existing layer that we've already built.
The problem with that, though, is that as a builder, even if you come in and say, I'm going to abstract all this complexity away, you're still stuck in the same kind of equilibrium that we've been stuck in since MetaMask was launched, right? Like even if you look at Phantom, okay, yeah, everyone's downloading Phantom, they're downloading a mobile wallet, but you're still needing to create a seed phrase, you're still needing to secure private keys. There's all of this stuff that as a dApp builder coming in or an application builder coming in saying, okay, cool, you've got existing smart contracts, you've got existing infrastructure, but you still need to conform to the same interfaces that we've had for the last 10 years. And so, we need to be able to break out of that. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think there's probably 4 or 5 other projects that are trying to do that are going to make platforms available where a Web 2 person can come in without understanding, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, and I actually agree with both of you, and that's why I articulate it as an inflection point. It's like, I feel like we have 2 or so years to go of really hard work before that's true. And I also strongly agree with your point that it's really about now. It's like the founders that come in over the next year or 2 are the ones that are going to build the really big new things. And I'm really excited for that. And this, why is there such sort of like a cult about founders? Because they're the ones innovating, right? And so I think this currency that we're starting to look at in crypto, we've been talking about technology for a long time. And I love technology, but I'm kind of tired of it, honestly. And I think the things that we need to start focusing on more are the products. Like, what are the new things that you can do that the world actually cares about that you can build in crypto? And it's just going to be a very small number of very high quality founders that actually innovate and build that. Like, I have a little bit of anger about just like how much copy, how much people copy each other in crypto. And I think that's fine, but it's like, if there's, like, who cares about like the next L1? Like, who cares about like the next Uniswap clone on that L1? Like, it's kind of interesting. Like, there's probably a business there, but it's like, it's really not that interesting from an innovation perspective. And so I really like the things, and even the ones that don't ultimately work out, that are trying to do something new within crypto. Like, I thought Friendtech was really cool, even though it didn't fundamentally work out. I thought meme coins, Pump Fun were really cool. I think some of the things with like the social coins and social trading, SocialFi generally very interesting. And not all these things are going to work out, but at least they're doing something new. And I feel like that's what we need in crypto in the next 2 or 3 years.
I want to hear everyone else's. What are some product ideas or interesting innovations that have happened over the last 8 or so years that you're really excited about that flopped? This is a cynical question.
I think that crypto cards that are tied to your borrowland accounts have been very interesting. We've had teams build out a Visa card that takes from your Drift borrowland balance, where you can actually trade perps with your spending balance, and you can spend with your profits or your yield right away. I like these applications where you're actually seeing use cases in your day-to-day life. We talked about using crypto to buy coffee for years now. And with the growth of stablecoins, the growth of DeFi, now you can say you can use your yield to actually pay for your day-to-day life. And I would like to see that being extended to things like mortgages and things like automobile payments.
I guess the counter is why do you think crypto cards have been relatively unsuccessful for so long then?
I think because crypto's been relatively unsuccessful.
Crypto payments.
Yeah, I mean, in order to be able to kind of, again, cross that chasm, we need to make the ability to hold and send and transact in crypto as easy as possible. And, if you look at a platform like Binance, it's very easy to send crypto within Binance. It's not as easy to send crypto outside of Binance to other places. So, the walled gardens that everyone's been operating in with crypto, inside of Coinbase or Kraken or Binance are not really amenable to all of the superpowers that crypto has. So we need to get people onto platforms that are natively on-chain, these native on-chain companies with native on-chain payment rails, and then all of a sudden you're going to unlock a bunch of use cases.
Do you think it's finally time for tokenized stocks? Been hoping for that.
We tried it. We tried it and we shut it down.
Yeah, you did it.
It was definitely not the time then. I think we have a window of opportunity over the next 3 years where you can definitely fuck around and find out a little bit. But I've heard a lot of people talking about this, and I think someone's going to be crazy enough to do it. So
under exchanges, maybe. More real-world assets, maybe.
Yeah, I think real-world assets generally, and to take it as a whole, I think that's where things are moving more over time. But I, again, just see that as the middle chapter in what we're doing here. I think the ultimate chapter is doing something new. I just think it's not that interesting to do the same things that have already been done in traditional finance on crypto rails. Yes, I know, I've been the one saying these things, it is more decentralized, it is more transparent, it is trustless, all this kind of stuff. Amazing, we should all do that stuff. But does it have to stop there? The internet, think about information before the internet and after the internet. It's a trillion times more stuff that you can do, and you could never have conceived of any of these types of things. And so that's the type of stuff that I'm actually really excited about in crypto. And I kind of feel like we've lost a bit of that enthusiasm in this space overall. And now we're when are we going to be 50% market share with Binance? When are we going to get the RWAs on chain? I get it. That's literally what I'm doing with my business right now. But the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm very excited about the 10 years, the 20 years from now. And I think that we have to continue to zoom out to that level and almost have a sense of wonder about it and be this is the internet of value. What can we build with the internet of value? There has to be something here that we have not conceptualized before. There has to be some class of founders that come in and do something that people think are impossible, right? And that's the stuff that's actually going to make it big. And I think we'll see that play out over the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to take a long time. And there's real work that all the people on the stage and elsewhere have to do to set ourselves, to set the future builders of crypto up for that type of success. But if we're zooming back into just DeFi, I really think of DeFi as the rails to enable all of that other type of experimentation. I articulated it as I want DYDX to be the place where all of that crazy, trillion X, trillions of assets, whatever it is type stuff, where it's the professional place where you can interact and trade with those things. It's not necessarily our job to go out and build them, but I am really excited about those things being built. And we have to start here, zooming back into today. We're doing a lot of hard work to actually build the rails to make all of that future happen.
I mean, if you think about like the waves of how enabling technologies impact society, right? You talk about the internet. We had that first wave. A lot of stuff was too early, died out, and then it was 2007 to 2009 where the intersection of mobile and the internet really allowed these two different enabling technologies to be combined, and then we got this proliferation of new services and amazing things. And I think that we are sort of waiting for the intersection of all of the stuff, of all the primitives we built in crypto to kind of hit the real world somewhere, and then we're going to take off and have this inflection point. And yeah, I mean, we've been building for a long time, and it hasn't quite happened yet. So it is a little bit frustrating, but I think one of the reasons why it hasn't happened is because we have been locked inside of people's databases. And, Binance is not amenable to composability and to really interfacing with the rest of the world. So we need to get people on DeFi rails, and we need to get people building on DeFi rails and connecting that somehow back to the main internet. And then I think that we'll see a bunch of new use cases that emerge.
How much do you think? Sorry, go on.
I'm very excited about tokenized stocks because I am not American, and a lot of our user base is not American. And I think one of the core principles of DeFi is that we want to enable access to these assets that aren't available otherwise if you are not American to begin with. The number of people that have actually told me, I really want to buy Tesla stock, I really want to buy Apple stock, I want to use it, 100x leverage with it. Can you build me a product to do that? It's unparalleled. None of them are in the US, right? So I do think that there's a big opportunity
Some are
for
probably
DeFi
in the
platforms.
US too.
Sorry?
Somewhere in the US, I would absolutely love.
Somewhere in the US too.
I'd love to trade Tesla Perps.
So there is a world there that this activity starts to happen on DeFi rather than Robinhood because of increased regulatory flexibility in DeFi. And imagine a world where you can actually cross-margin your Bitcoin with coin stock and trade against Tesla Perps and Apple options too, all in one platform. We're very excited about that world. Whether that's going to be in DeFi, my bet is that it's going to take place in DeFi versus CeFi.
I think so. I would agree with that, and I am excited about those things in the coming years as well. I think there will be a big proliferation of DeFi that way. But again, I really would challenge us to zoom out here. Like, why are we all here? Is it just to make money, or are we actually trying to build something that changes the world? That's up for you to answer. But I got to the points in this journey here where I'm mostly interested in doing something in this entire industry that is going to change the world for a lot of people in a really positive way. And again, I think it's just when we zoom out to 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we think about trillions, maybe even more assets being traded, or just things having value. What might that even look like? I can't even conceptualize it. And that makes me really excited, right? And whatever that future is, to ground it back to the title of this conversation on DeFi versus CeFi, I can personally guarantee you that will not happen on centralized exchanges. It's not because they're doing anything wrong. We have close partnerships. I think that the centralized exchanges today are relatively trusted brands in the space. That's amazing. It's just literally impossible, right? That's the entire thing that we're building here. It's decentralized technology. And that's why I think ultimately DeFi will be the rails for those things to be traded. It's not even going to be the entire thing. I think 20 years from now, we'll look back at DeFi and it'll just be primitives and it'll just kind of work. And you'll come into the space and it'll be wow, I created something and now it has value and now it has spot and lending and perps and it integrates with Robinhood and all this kind of stuff. But we're just building this technology at this inflection point in crypto to enable all of that really cool stuff to happen in the future.
Okay, we only have a little bit of time left. Let's do lightning. What will be the next DeFi app or category to flip CeFi? I know it's a small ball here, but what's the prediction? When do you think it'll happen?
I mean, it has to be Perps, right? I think that we've made a lot of progress in the last few years, and that's the place where the switching costs for a trader are probably the lowest. And so, yeah, my view is that it'll be Perps in the next 12 months.
Yeah, well, if you're forcing me to zoom back
All
into reality here.
Founders.
No, I definitely looked with Perps. And if we go back to the numbers, right?
Even though Spot has like
You mentioned it, like Spot is at like 30% market share relative to centralized exchanges. So it's already happening right now. Like Spot is already at 30, Perps are at like 10 to 15% or so. So over the next 2 or 3 years, I think we'll see those really approach 50%. Maybe we'll hit that inflection point where that's more than 50%. If I had to pick the one next thing that's like this new space that I'm excited about, in DeFi, or sorry, Web3 generally, I'd say it's SocialFi. And the reason that excites me is, again, just more things being assigned value. And I think there's going to be ways that is very excited from a product and user perspective.
I would say a combination of Perps and Spot because fundamentally those are intertwined. I think more spot volume on chain ultimately leads to more assets being issued on chain, which then leads to more demand for leverage trading. So I think it has to all happen at once.
you got to give a date very quickly. The time. Next year, 5 years.
I think that spot trading flips centralized exchanges in 2 years from now and Perps in 3 years from now. And then, we'll get to 1 trillion assets in 10 years.
Yeah, a couple years for me.
I think 3 years is the max cap. Let's come back here 3 years from now and have this exact panel again.
We'll do it. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you guys. This is great.